GM, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Move Monday. We're just waiting a little bit to get the rest of the people on, so be good. And we got a special guest from Wormhole today.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. GM.
GM. I guess we did not try the waiting music that we did last time. That kind of got stuck for a while, but it's good from that. Hopefully everyone's having a good Monday, if it's the beginning of the day or the end of the day, depending on where you're at. I don't know where you're at, actually.
I'm in London, so it's 6 p.m. here.
Oh,
So I would say still the beginning of the day.
it's still the beginning of the day, 6 p.m. It's not too bad. It's 10 a.m. for us, so I guess I gotta let David up if I really want to. Okay, we'll just wait a couple more minutes to get everyone else up here. How you doing today, David? Holding in?
Hey everybody. Hope everybody's having a great day. Welcome to Monday, Move Monday. GM, GN, whatever. I don't know what that even means, but everybody says it. I think people all say back, and bra. Back.
You guys are ridiculous.
Did anybody see how Avery and his wife met? He just said back, and he didn't believe it worked, but look at that. They have a beautiful story of two Mingos getting together, giving birth to a baby Aptos egg.
Yeah, that was just it. I mean, I guess I should try that next time.
How do we know you haven't tried it already?
You never know.
Guess we could always check with Sarah. But on a serious note, we have some exciting news to share with you. You know, since we're just kind of burning through time right now, I wanted to give a quick update that our main man, Daniel over in London, has been working his tail off to get you guys some awesome faucet updates. I don't know. Daniel actually on the call today or whatever, the space?
I don't see him, but it's hard on this tiny phone screen to tell.
Well, that gives me a great opportunity to steal his thunder, and which I like to do, and just share with everybody that we have decided to reopen testnet faucet publicly. There's no captcha. It's widely available. You can go and abuse it. If you abuse it, we're going to have to put a captcha up again. So, you know, there's no tokenomics on testnet. There's no value in APT on testnet. It's literally just there so you can go and build. If you want to try to abuse it, we'll have to put up a captcha and all that other fun stuff again. But the goal is starting later today. It's open right now. We just haven't published it. You can actually start getting APT from this command line again for testnet. All of our tutorials will seamlessly work again on testnet like the good old days. So we're really excited to bring that to you folks to help make it easier for builders to build. And huge props
Nice.
to Daniel.
We can go back to building everything in Bash. No need to open browsers. It's great.
Yep, no need to get a Chrome extension wallet. It's a limited supported Chrome extension wallet just for the sake of getting APT and moving all your private keys all around just so you can go and have fun registering the wallet. So
Back.
that's what she said.
Oh, Opa. I'm excited to. We have a Unity SDK up in the Unity store, and the big blocker for testing on testnet, seamlessly within the app has been the inability to have a testnet that doesn't require doing captchas, a faucet, and so expect hopefully something about that this week. We can share some links. We'll tweet a little bit. And you'll be able to, for those working in Unity, have a hopefully slightly more seamless experience testing and building inside of the application.
All right. Well, I guess we should. Any more announcements from you guys? Other than I can say that we have brew support for the CLI. I think I've said this for like the 5th time now, but if you're building on Mac or some Linux, it sometimes works. You can use brew to build the CLI. And now I'm probably going to butcher your name, but we have Kasanger Kiss from Wormhole.
Oh, it's close enough. It's not bad. Yeah, it's pronounced Chonger. I'm from Hungary. So.
Okay, Chonger.
Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I contribute to Wormhole, the cross-chain interoperability and messaging protocol. Worked on a bunch of different blockchain implementations of the protocol. So I would say I have a pretty good understanding of a lot of the specific details of different blockchain runtimes. Which is why I'm here, because I think that the Aptos runtime and the Move VM is a very cool piece of technology, and so yeah, I had a lot of fun building out the Wormhole contracts on Aptos. A lot of fun with the Move language. I guess a little bit more about the background, why I'm interested in Move and languages. I spent a few years in academia doing programming language research. Spent a good number of years writing programs in Haskell. If people have heard about that one, it's a niche little language, but it's one of my favorites. Yeah, and that's I guess at a high level, it's all about me.
Yeah. One thing I guess I forgot to say about was what Wormhole is. So Wormhole is an interoperability protocol that allows projects to build on top of its generic message passing layer and connects to 20 blockchains across 7 VMs. And it can be used by developers to build DApps or XDApps, a type of chain agnostic application to take advantage of X assets and X data for liquidity, communities, and user identity. So yeah, that's great that you contribute to Wormhole. I just wanted to give that little blurb because in case someone actually doesn't know what Wormhole is.
Yeah.
And the reason we have you on here today is that you wrote 2 articles about Move on Aptos.
Yeah, that's right.
What brought you to writing these articles on Move today?
So, obviously Move is a very new programming language that doesn't have an established ecosystem. Some of the best practices and some of the patterns are still emerging, and I kind of thought that what as we were building up the Wormhole contracts, what we found a few different interesting things that you can do with Move, or maybe things that are not immediately obvious how to do on Aptos, and I guess we'll talk about what these are. But in general, I just thought, gee, it would have been very useful or very nice to, when starting out with Move, to be able to read some of these, read about some of these techniques, and yeah, I just thought let's try and give back to the other up and coming Move engineers, and maybe they'll have even better ideas and they can write even more blog posts about Move, which would be great, because I think Move is a very good Move. Sort of the features of the language make it a very good language to write smart and safe smart contracts. So yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I'm not a big Move programmer myself, so I don't actually know some good design patterns to follow when I write this code. And I was reading through this; it was actually very helpful for me. So maybe a little background that we can give to some of the people around here who might not have read the article is why resource invariants are important, and how is this different than other languages?
Yeah. So yeah, the first article is about a use case which actually came up, or this problem came up a lot in implementing the Wormhole contracts on all the different chains. So obviously, Wormhole, like you said before, is connected to maybe 7 different blockchain runtimes at this point, something like that. So we did write pretty much the same program over and over and again, trying to conform to different runtime constraints. And so one of the things that kept coming up constantly is this problem of, okay, well, Wormhole sends messages between blockchains, and when you receive these messages, you want to first, it's a sequence of bytes. That's how it comes through the wire. The first thing you want to do is parse the message into some structured format. So we did end up implementing parsers, in Solidity, on Solana, Move, of course, Cosmos, or Cosmosm, I should say. And what we found is that there are a couple of security requirements. Like, for example, because we're talking about unstructured binary data, just a sequence of bytes that we're trying to turn into a structured format in the VM. A very useful check to perform, or a very critical check to perform is to make sure that when you've parsed the structured data out of the bytes, there are no leftover bytes. And this can actually have security implications as well, because this is blockchains. Anything that you're not checking can be turned into a vulnerability. So it's very critical that we parse the bytes, and at the end make sure that we had just the right number of bytes. And so in all the other languages, when we wrote these functions, it was something that we have to have written down as a rule that, okay, when you're parsing, just make sure that you've consumed the whole input. And that's something that you have to remember to do when writing Solidity, or even Rust for something like Solana. But Move's type system makes it possible to actually construct parsers in a way that the compiler will guarantee that you've consumed the whole input. And so the first blog post is kind of the description of a library that we built, that we use to parse data, and also guarantee by construction that the data is always going to have the exact right number of bytes. And if you forget to insert the length check at the end of the parsing function, then the Move compiler will just refuse to compile your program and tell you, hey, you still have this little witness object that doesn't have a drop ability, and you need to make sure you need to get rid of it somehow. And the only way to get rid of it is by calling the length check function.
I see. So you're basically making sure that you have to do things the right way, so that way you can't get in a position where you're losing something. That's great.
Yeah, and that's actually, I think, a great way to think about these invariants in general is there are all of these security checks they just have to remember to do. And as smart contract code evolves, other people come to the project, they start building features. If these rules, the example I used was length checking on binary input. But if these rules are not enforced by some mechanism, then someone one day will forget to put the check in, and something bad can happen. So the more of these things that we can push into the type system, or to some sort of static analysis mechanism, the better for us, because we just that's now a solved problem. In our Move contracts, we'll never have issues with forgetting to insert this particular check.
And how does this differ from a different language such as Solidity?
Yeah, so Solidity doesn't really give you, Solidity. You take a bytes object, and you start looping through and reading out bytes. But the language doesn't really give you any mechanism to say, or to enforce that once you've read those bytes, just say, hey, I expected 137 bytes to be in this input, and it doesn't. There's no way to enforce that. There's no way to guarantee that the programmer who writes the parsing code will insert that code without heavy code review and any sort of human supervision.
Without a whole lot of checks and a lot of balances that you need out of that, versus just the language just does it for you, won't compile if it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
That's
which is
great.
awesome.
Yeah. So how do you feel about Move versus these other languages now?
Yeah, I would say that, I've used, I think, almost all the blockchain languages that exist. And I think Move is in this position where obviously, like, it's still some features that I wish Move had, but my overall experience is that um, building out the wormhole contracts was probably the quickest in Move, and um, we had the least number of gotchas, weird security related gotchas that we had to think about. So overall, it's very easy to build the contracts. It was very easy to validate the contracts. It is, very very positive experience. So I think Move is currently my favorite like blockchain smart contract language.
Cool. Did you get a chance to use the prover at all to formally verify the contracts?
Yeah, so played around with the prover a little bit to verify a couple of properties. I think the time that we built those contracts in the first place, the prover was still a little difficult to use, and there were certain loop invariants that I think just didn't necessarily get translated to the right SMT formulas. So I think it was a little rough, and so we didn't push too hard on the formal verification. But I've seen that since then it's come a long way, and maybe we should just give it another go and go back and you know add some higher level reasoning around some of the state access patterns and things like that. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think I had a contract that I wrote. Now it's almost a year and a half ago, and I tried to write something with a prover. And as someone who's never written something for formal verification, it was pretty hard for me. But I've seen that all the improvements that we've made along the way, which is great.
Yeah, and I think that's it's very very exciting to have this feature built in. I think that's another thing is the ecosystem matures and the kind of properties that people write or these sort of patterns emerge. I think that could provide as a feedback loop back into the formal verification language and to allow expressing certain properties more concisely. Like maybe you want an object to have a unique instance throughout the whole blockchain, and maybe that's something that could have like a special a property in the prover language. But I'm definitely excited to see this technology being available in kind of this mainstream on this mainstream platform.
Interesting. So, as a kind of an expert here who's seen a lot of these other languages, we get asked really often for people coming from Ethereum or Solana, any advice you'd have for, I guess, for either of them, any gotchas and any kind of interesting things that you were used to in a certain way in Solana and ETH that may have been a forgotten move?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I definitely see just like looking around some of the move contracts out there in the open. I definitely see that a lot of people will come from Solidity and try to apply the same. But this is a natural thing, of course, like the same kind of thinking to construct their move programs to look very much like their Solidity programs. So an example of this is access control in Solidity. Like the code that figures out who's allowed to call a function and who's not. In Solidity is implemented by looking at the message sender, which the move equivalent of that is the signer object, which is an argument to your entry functions, and looking at the signer object and figuring out whether the signer is whether that address is equal to some admin field in the contract state and things like that. And I think whilst that's good, Move just has much better ways of implementing very fine-grained access control through these capability objects. So I think it's relatively easy to just get something working when you first come into Move, but I think the huge value add is when you really go in and start to experiment with the unique features of Move that are just not there in Solidity or even in Rust or even like Solana flavored Rust.
Yeah, thank you. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and before we bring other people on to ask questions, I want to ask you real quick about the governance article that you gave as well. Um, we saw that you built a governance protocol basically for Wormhole. How does it apply to how you build on Aptos?
Yeah, so I think like the governance aspect specifically. So just for those who haven't had a chance to look at the blog post, the idea is that what we wanted to do there was to guard the upgradability, the contract upgradability logic behind the same governance body that governs the rest of the Wormhole ecosystem. So Wormhole is operated by 19 what we call guardians, and these 19 guardians are the sort of you can think of as the validators for the Wormhole network. And any decision about contract upgrades or new chains being supported is made by the guardians. Then you need at least 2/3 of them need to approve that this contract upgrade should happen, or this new blockchain should be connected to the network. So it's very important to us that on an implementer level, that when someone goes in and deploys the Wormhole contracts, the deployer should have no special abilities to change the behavior of the contracts after the fact. It should always be the guardian's supermajority decision to change the behavior of these contracts. So what we found was that there's a lot of great tooling for Aptos around contract upgradability, and the bytecode verifier is great, all those things, but we felt that there was this missing piece, which is the ability to implement your custom checks, your custom logic for protecting upgrades. So what we did is build this governance module that allowed us to deploy the contract, and then beyond the point of deployment, the deployer wallet has no special access to the contract, and from that point onwards, it's the supermajority of the guardians who can then submit their votes on contract upgrades, and then the contract just checks that their signatures are valid, that there's 2/3 of them, and so those types of things. And it gives me a lot of peace of mind that I don't have to be very careful about my hot wallet, and if someone steals my private keys, they won't be able to take over any of the contracts that I deployed.
Awesome. And is this something that other people would use for things like DAOs as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the way that the module is built, it pretty much just allows anyone to come in and add their own verification logic. I even gave maybe an example in the blog post about like what types of checks you might want to perform. But the point here is that yes, it basically allows you to come up with your own contract upgradability checks, the governance, whatever you'd like, and yet that could be a DAO, and a DAO could come in and say that holders of the project's tokens will have the ability to decide on additional features, and that's something that could be implemented through this module.
Cool. David, Max, do you have any questions for Changger?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that I've taken a look at the source, and I know that there's some. I remember the really fun thing that you were doing with inserting into bytecode inside of Move from within Move, and then uploading a module. That one may not necessarily diversify or generalize very easily. But is there any thinking around potentially open sourcing pieces of this in a way others can use?
Yeah, so I think the one you're referring to it hasn't made it into a blog post yet. That's something that's coming up soon. I sort of still trying to figure out what's a good way to present that. But yeah, we came up with some pretty funky ways of on-chain module deployment, where the module bytecode is constructed dynamically on the fly during contract execution. and that allowed us to solve the problem of which people who've written Move code might be familiar with, which the coin type requires when you want to initialize a new coin type, you first have to deploy a module that exposes a type, which is used as a phantom type argument for the coin type. And we basically wrote this this code that dynamically instantiates those structs so that new coin types can be created on the fly without anyone having to like manually deploy new modules. The contract sort of takes care of that, and it allows us to have both the nice guarantees of the coin types phantom arguments, as using as like sort of a type safety feature, but at the same time dynamically creating new coin types in a permissionless way. So I'm still working on that blog post, but that's coming up too.
Okay, that's super exciting.
So that's news to me, but I've got my head in a hole these days, so I have no idea what's going on in the ecosystem. But if what you're saying is true, where do we stop with this? What more fun things can we do with this bytecode insertion framework? What have you thought about?
Yeah, so I don't know if I have any other use cases for this right now. It was certainly a fun little puzzle trying to solve that problem because it's something that Move standard library or the Aptos framework just doesn't provide out of the box. But it was very, very cool that the module publishing in general in Aptos goes through a smart contract function. And so that fact alone just allowed us to implement this solution without, having to bug the Aptos Foundation to, add new functionality for us.
Yeah, that's quite amazing, as my colleague would say. But more sincerely, one of the challenges that we often run into is we add new functionality and we want to have, layers of dynamic dispatch for things that we relatively trust. But the only way to kind of get that fundamentally right now is by uploading new modules that can somehow route calls into the specific implementation. For instance, you could imagine we want to create several similar types of structs and modules, and each one might have the same function call on it. And we can just do a type info and then dispatch to that call. But that doesn't allow us to have it kind of like binding where I just upload a new module and somehow the source, like the router, can automatically update it. So I do wonder if there's some additional fun things that we could do in terms of balancing out some of these overheads so the users don't have to go through such a hassle.
Yeah, dynamic dispatch in general is just it's a difficult thing to add to a runtime. And it's going to be, I can see it would be very challenging to add it in a way that preserves the otherwise, very strong static guarantees of Move. Because like a lot of these security checks or the security assumptions in Move rely on statically linking against a known and trusted module. And so the moment you add dynamic dispatch, then, what kind of functions are you allowed to call? And are we inadvertently introducing attack vectors like reentrancy and things of that nature?
Right. And so this wouldn't actually be dynamic dispatch. It would just give the flavor of dynamic dispatch. So it's kind of interesting to see where we could go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is still static dispatch. It's just that the module is deployed dynamically, but you can instantiate the type after the fact. So actually, we have to perform the coin deployment in two different transactions because of this, I guess, limitation or this property of the Move VM that you're not allowed to use bytecode that you deployed in the transaction in the same transaction. So you have to like split it up into two.
Oh, that's fair too. Yeah.
Okay, well, David, can you mute yourself? Okay, awesome. Well, all right. Now we're going to travel on to our favorite part of the Move Monday, question and answer. So we're going to bring some people up. They can ask some questions, all of that. I see that some people requested way back at the beginning, so I will see if you're still up there, I'll call you up. If you have any questions for the team or for Chunger. Cameron, you're on.
Hello.
Hey.
I guess I just had a couple of questions on like where you guys are trying to take the ecosystem and like a couple of the motives behind the decisions to take the ecosystem in those directions.
I guess this is more of a question to the Aptos folks than me.
Yeah. Is there any kind of more detailed question? I think we're trying to take the ecosystem in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah. So like with the Move programming language, like that in itself is novel. So like there's obviously opportunities to branch out and explore new avenues that haven't been explored yet, and kind of flex your muscles as far as the capabilities that Aptos can bring to the whole ecosystem.
Yeah. So I think one of the ways that I think of blockchain as a whole is blockchain is a platform, right? I think of us as a platform as a service company. And so the Move language exists to help allow for safety, the way Chandra was talking about with the verifier and with a lot of the resource guarantees that you have. The Aptos blockchain as a whole with higher TPS and lower time to finality. I think there's a lot of interesting things that couldn't have been built before that we're building, that are possible to build now. But I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a specific kind of area that we're maybe over-indexing on, right? We're not necessarily focused purely on DeFi or purely on gaming or anything else, if that's the question.
Yeah, it's more so like, so there's a lot of objectives for these different layer ones currently, and with Aptos, I just feel like you guys did double down on your TPS statements like earlier or later in 2022. So the longer term vision for Aptos seems like you guys have something that isn't necessarily general information. So I feel like if you could give a little bit more clarity into what is the long-term vision for Aptos in building out these communities and establishing you guys on the playing board.
I think it just goes to the fact that we are building a general purpose blockchain, and it's not just a blockchain. We're, as Max alluded to, like the intent is a platform. I think when people look at a lot of blockchains, they're like, that blockchain exists to solve this one specific purpose. The entire blockchain organization focuses its efforts towards a single effort, and as a result, once that effort has been met or friction has been met going towards that, or the ecosystem is limited in their creativity, all these things don't really help to build a long-term and viable path for really creating novelty in the Web3 space. When we built out Aptos, when we built out this technology, we always envisioned that it could really be a place for any concept, any idea coming into Web3 and really helping catch Web3 on fire. And so we're just really focused on identifying what's required to go through the process of building the most effective Web3 ecosystem possible. And so obviously you can't build a Web3 ecosystem without a layer one. And so that was where the first effort was in. But you can actually see, if you look at our history, we actually built out our ecosystem team in parallel with our blockchain team. And so we have a substantial effort in building out all these things. We have an indexer, a GraphQL endpoint that gives you rich data access into the blockchain. Again, that's something you don't typically see this early in the process, but we're so focused on making sure that general purpose applications can be built in there. Max is actively working with partners on building out gaming SDKs, again, because that's a critical component to bringing in novel concepts into the space. And we don't want to be, excessively focused on one technology or the other. We want to simply enable anybody that has a creative idea to come into the space, say, I've got the tools that can make me successful, and we're going to work with them. We're going to help them identify opportunities within the ecosystem and just kind of scale out and discover themselves inside of Aptos, discover themselves inside of Web3. And I know that's kind of a non-answer, but the reality is we're not going to specialize. We really perceive ourselves and we recognize ourselves as a modular framework that can really solve all the fundamental issues that we see in front of us with inside of Web3 and open up ourselves for the challenges that are going to come after that.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I was kind of seeing it in that realm so far. So I really appreciate the answer.
Awesome having you. Thanks, Cameron.
All right, Hugo, you're next.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, hi Hugo.
Yeah, I'm good.
What can we answer for you?
Yeah, great. Okay, so my name is Hugo. I'm actually a Nigerian. I'm in Nigeria, and I've actually been involved with this project from the very beginning. I also do my own little contribution to educate people here. I wasn't able to meet up at the very beginning because of some personal businesses I had to run. But when I came in, I was able to catch a few, a few of the discussions that was taking place. And I just have just one question concerning the wormhole. I think the speaker that spoke about it mentioned about 18 people as the guardians, and they would be like validators, right? And they they have a certain amount of influence over what goes on and what does not go on. I want to ask, doesn't this put the entire blockchain at the back foot in terms of decentralization? I don't really know. I'd like to know what your thoughts on that are. I want to believe that it has been well thought out, but I just want you to address this. I think 18 people are quite small in relation to the entire larger ecosystem. So what does this do as regards decentralization? Yeah, I think that's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So the way that, if I understand this correctly, you're saying that Wormhole is operated by 19 guardians, and 19 is arguably not a very large number, especially if you compare it to how many validators certain blockchains have. No, I think this is a fair point. In general, it's very difficult to have a set of a very decentralized to bootstrap a very decentralized system that has even 20 or like 20 validators. Like if you look at some of the blockchains, their Nakamoto consensus is going to be less than the super majority of the wormhole guardians. But in practice, these guardians are some of the most respected validator companies that validate for some of the biggest blockchains. If you look at Solana, Ethereum, the top validators on those chains many of them are guardians for Wormhole, and so I think there's always a trade-off that you have to consider. Proof of stake doesn't magically solve everything. Like there are difficult challenges on the way to decentralization, and that's I think something that the Wormhole contributors are constantly reevaluating and trying to think of ways to make the protocol more decentralized, reduce the trust assumptions of the system. So that's something that Wormhole is actively thinking about. I think my personal belief is that the 19 highly respected entities is a good intermediate solution. On the side, we're currently actively researching a backend using zero knowledge proofs. So trying to move away from a model where entities are looking at blockchain, looking at blockchain data, and you have to trust their signatures to a model where the blockchain information can be trustlessly verified on other chains just by following a zero knowledge verifiable computation model.
Well, thank you very much. I think I can go with what you said. As long as these validators or these guardians have some form of experience from other massive blockchains, you mentioned Ethereum, I think that kind of puts me at ease. Yeah, so thank you Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for your question, Hugo.
All right, Maverick, you're up next.
Yeah, I don't really have a question. I just wanted to hop up here on this beautiful Move Monday and give a little shout out to the Aptos team, Max, Greg, David. You guys are killing it. We love you.
Thanks.
We love you too. And it was great meeting everyone last week. I'm pulling up Irvin and excuse me, whichever one of you wins.
Hey guys.
Hey, Susmeet it is. Hey,
Hey
Susmeet,
guys.
welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great here. It was an amazing space hearing the way the engineering decisions have been taken place around move and all of those things. So particularly, I just had a question around the USP of the prover system that the Aptos is utilizing, right? So the other ZKP frameworks that we see, either in form of L2s or either in form of L1s, they are ultimately using the Sigma protocols of called prover and verifier system. So, what are the basically the USPs of the Aptos prover systems that we have? Is it on the uh, prover size, proof size, or prover time, or it is something other arithmetization process that we are using? So, I just wanted to understand on those aspects.
So I think what you're referring to are proof systems that have to do with zero knowledge, like producing zero knowledge proofs, right?
Yeah.
The move prover is, well, it sounds like it might do that. What it does instead is it has nothing to do with zero knowledge proofs. Instead, it's a static analysis framework which you can use to prove properties about your programs. So you can prove that, for example, smart contract execution will never revert, or will only revert in particular ways. So it's kind of a very different notion of a prover than what you're describing. And I kind of, thinking about this, I also realized that the word proof comes up in so many different contexts within crypto that you really have to dig into what exactly is happening here. But to answer, there's no arithmetization or any of that stuff. This is an industrial static analysis framework, the move prover.
Awesome, makes sense. I think you're exactly correct. The word proof has been used in so many contexts that it's actually confusing in nature. Yep, I would agree with that point.
Thank you, Smith. Irvin, go for it.
Hey guys. Hey Greg, Max, everyone here, David. I had a question really briefly. So currently for Wormhole, you have Token Bridge and also the messaging layer deployed. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Got it. I had a question because in terms of developing cross-compatible NFTs in that context, how will that work in itself? Will you need to deploy an actual contract across all different chains and then actually have Wormhole bridge them over? Or what's the architecture for such thing?
Oh, so you're asking about moving NFTs cross-chain. So there are two answers to this. So one is actually, we've already implemented the NFT bridge contracts. I think the only missing piece is sort of the TypeScript SDK integration and all of those things that are currently in progress. But there actually is a move implementation of Wormhole's NFT bridge protocol. It's coming soon. But in general, there's this, I guess, question around, NFTs can have a lot of interesting behavior that's unique to that NFT. And when you transfer an NFT through a generic transfer protocol, like, any NFT bridge that exists out there, you won't really be able to capture all those extra properties of your NFTs that exist on their native chain, because there's only so much you can pack into a generic transfer protocol. So yes, there is a way to send NFTs through without having to implement your own custom contracts, but to really get the benefit of cross-chain, I think the right way for NFTs to go is to implement contracts on multiple chains. Obviously, it's more difficult when those chains have different runtimes. But what you get in turn is the ability to precisely control the behavior, royalties, all those things across chains, and that's something that you can build on top of Wormhole today. So if you wanted to have a cross-chain NFT project, then Wormhole is more than ready to cater to that use case.
Got it. Looking forward to the NFT bridge. And I have a question for Greg, Max, and David. In terms of Wormhole, what are the core use cases on Aptos that you guys would like to see Wormhole being leveraged for?
I think two of the big ones obviously is bridges, right? For coins. I love the fact that we have liquidity on chain, but I think I'd love to see more to really allow deeper liquidity pools for more interesting DeFi applications. I think is one of the big ones, and obviously Wormhole is a big enabler of that for being able to more easily, without having to go through a bunch of centralized exchanges, move liquidity between chains. I think one of the other ones that we're starting to see, and Irvin, I want to call out, is one of those that is helping us with the gaming SDK, potentially with building some game demos as well. And so, the question of cross-platform, cross-chain NFTs, I think is a really interesting one, because we are working to build experiences that are much more, I think, cross-game. We want to come up with some demos. We want to come up with SDKs that let you bring NFTs between games, between applications. And with Wormhole, we can do that not just between ecosystems, like mini game ecosystems that people build on chain, but we can do that between cross-chain ecosystems. And I think in a world where you have things like DeGods moving chains, things become a little bit more interesting, and I think Wormhole can play a much more central role in this future where projects are increasingly realizing that they can move across chains to kind of for business or personal or what have you reasons.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, and it's great meeting you guys last week. Looking forward to releasing new things.
Absolutely. Likewise.
We got Flight Lieutenant up next.
Yeah, good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
I followed Aptos in the beginning, and I was actually part of the people who were trying to get joined on the third incentivized testnet, and I had some problems with these AWS and Israel, and I was not able to complete the testnet. But earlier on, that was I think last month, I applied as an intern, software engineer intern, and I was interested in seeing if I could get a place. And the description showed that you would be working on blockchain stuff, cryptography, and compilers. And as somebody who is more like a hacker, trying to learn the things that interest me and trying to understand stuff like compilers, programming languages, and operating systems, I was hoping I would get a place there. Unfortunately, I didn't get. So I was thinking, and I actually have plans of applying again, because for the past years I've been doing Python and JavaScript, Python being my major stack, and I just picked up Rust a few months ago, and I'm also looking into compilers and operating systems and programming language. So I was thinking, what would be the stuff that would be required for me to be able to make it onto the Aptos team? Where do I get fixed inside? What are the things that I need to build up into my CV that I can stand a better chance of getting inside?
That's a great question. We're always looking to bring in new talent, and I think the internship program is still in the process of going through the interviews and all that process. We actually got, I think, hundreds of people to apply, so we've had to actually close out the job rec just so that the team can start making progress through there. But I think your question is more fundamentally on, like, I want to build. How do I start building? And usually, I think the best approach is to say either one, I have a problem that I care a lot about. Let me go understand the tools that can help me solve that problem. And the other alternative is I just really want to know the tools so that when an interesting problem appears, I can go about solving that. In the first case, I think they kind of actually overlap. And so what I would recommend, we actually have a decent amount of documentation on the site, aptos.dev, where you can go through and start building things out. From there, you might want to pick a problem like, I want to do something fun with NFTs. Like I want to make it maybe a game where I have two NFTs combating on chain, and I want the output to also be stored on chain. And so you just kind of pick up these type of small problems to kind of play around with. You might build a website around it. And so there you've already kind of said, okay, I need to learn CLIs. I need to learn how to develop and move. I need to learn how to publish my move code. I need to learn how to interact with the data on chain. And I also need to learn how to submit transactions through my website. And so that'd be kind of like the process that I would kind of go through. We actually had a great opportunity to meet folks that have actually kind of like largely self-taught last week, and it was really eye-opening to see the process in which they go. And they just kind of say, I have a problem and I'm going to figure out the tools I need to do to solve it. I'm going to get it with something that works, and if it's valuable, I'll iterate and I'll make it better and better and better. If it's not, I'm going to move on to the next problem. And so that's kind of like, I think those are the general kind of suggestions and ideas that I'd kind of do to kick off a pathway into hacking in Web3. And I think the other thing that's just worth calling out is, in order to be successful, you don't need to necessarily be a professional programmer. You can start out as a hacker and really develop your skills. And I would actually argue, I kind of like the hacker mindset a little bit more because it brings in ingenuity, it brings creativity. A lot of professional programmers, they end up getting stuck into a mold and then they lose their ability to actually think in an agile sense. So definitely love the idea of people kind of starting into the space and just exploring and having fun.
Cool. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that puts me in that gives you more information that before I ask this question. So I think I'll look into that then. I'll try to start hacking with some of the tools that Aptos provides. For instance, I'm part of the Discord of the Move programming language already. Stuff that interests me. I really want to understand the internals of like designing a programming language like Move and compilers and stuff like that. So those are the things I really want to look into, like how to build compilers and how to build programming languages. And I was thinking that starting with Move and the compiler stuff would be interesting for me. That is something that I really want to spend some time looking into.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm also self-taught, and I love it. Next up, just to answer your question, we have Bone Shamans.
Okay, well, I think we're going to have to take Bone Jobs off and bring up someone else.
Truly terrifying, but I do love the art. Thank you, Bone Shamans, for that very insightful commentary. Up next,
I heard them.
Up next, we have Shamrock. We are getting close to the end. We can go over a little bit, but we only have time for one or two. Shamrock, you're up next. Hey, how's it going? Or Alexa. Alexa won the race. Yeah, go for it.
Alexa.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, what can we answer for you?
Hello. I cannot hear you. Hello.
You can't hear us?
Hello.
Oh, so Twitter Spaces has bugged out once again. If you can't hear me, we'll have to bring up someone else. Shamrock, go ahead and speak.
Hello. What's up, everyone? So,
Hey Shamrock, how you doing? What can we answer for you?
doing pretty good. And how about you?
Doing great. What can we answer for you?
You actually had so many, technical questions here, but I'm not actually, technical guy. I'm more about, art and, community. So I have some, down to earth question for mostly for Aptos team. Actually, honestly, me personally, I already know the answer, especially after everything I've seen from the, the San Francisco event. Which finished a few days ago, but we have such a huge audience here, so I think they will, they will be happy to listen to your answer. So actually, my question is, what is your main, passion, main inspiration about, building all this, ecosystem? And if you have, any muse, what is it or who is it? And what really, inspires you to wake up each morning and, continue building and evolving?
Yeah, I think the short answer here is you, right? Like, is everyone out here? Last week there was a NFT meetup that I'm sure you've seen on Twitter, and it's absolutely inspiring and extremely motivating just to see people using the things that we build, building on Aptos, creating, hustling every day. It's just absolutely amazing. And that ultimately is what keeps me going every day is knowing that, we're doing the right thing because people are using the things that we build. And I'm gonna try to sneak in one last one here of Ryder.
Hey,
Thanks
Mr.
for
Max.
reply.
Sorry about that, Shamrock. Thank you, Mr. Max, for bringing me up. Big fan of what you guys accomplished over the past couple of weeks. I had a couple of contacts that went out to the event that you guys hosted, one of which was Task down there in the audience from Ghost Kid. I'm Ryder, by the way, Solana-centric. I'm the COO of Bell Studios over there, and I wanted to ask you guys that about your reception. I have it on good authority that you were very well received within your contacts in Web 2. And props to you guys for really knocking it out of the park. I mean, that's a league above Solana already. But you weren't very well received to the Web3 audience. What's your plans for changing the narrative there, if you have plans at all?
What narrative where? I honestly, I'm an engineer. I'm not sure how to answer, that kind of level of non-technical. But from my experience at least, that hasn't necessarily been the case of, being poorly received in the Web3 space, at least from what I've seen. But again, I'm solely an engineer.
I understand. No, it's not fun or anything. I just, like probably everybody else in this space, like they get around and like, it's not so much that everybody is actively against Aptos. That's not what I'm saying here. It's just, I don't think that many are very aware of what can be done with Aptos. And, from, I guess, to bring it into your realm is that, how do you plan on branching out and publicizing, rather, the capabilities of what can be done on Aptos to the Web3 consumer retail audience at large?
So I'll take this one because we got to wrap up. We're actually at the hour. I mean, the reality is, I don't know if you were on the show for the entirety of the time, but one person actually came up and asked a very similar question of how do you, what's your niche? And I think the reality is we're building an amazing layer one platform, and it's really a broader platform for Web3 that goes into solve a lot of common problems that exist inside that space. And so if you're building inside of the space, if you want to get into space, I don't think you're going to find an easier blockchain to build on and trust that it's going to meet you with every single one of your needs. And, obviously we have a lot of work to do in terms of getting the documentation out there, evangelizing and getting into the hackathons and all that kind of great stuff. These are all on the roadmap. We've got the Aptos World Tour kicking off in a couple weeks in Seoul. and you know, people are going to start seeing all the amazing things that are being built on, and there's already an amazing amount of things that are already built there. We had the largest layer one launch to history, and that's largely due to the amazing ecosystem. And that ecosystem is heavily driven by both Web 2 and Web 3 entities. So I feel the love in the Web 2 and Web 3 space. And with that, I'm just going to wish everybody a fantastic week. We love you. We love having you here, and we look forward to seeing you guys next Monday. Have a great Monday, everyone.